10 years ago I was not really much aware about the mess with the new age community of people and spiritual ideologies.
I see.
I tried to be more and more and more precise. Nevertheless, people select what they like to hear and they discharge what they don't like to hear. So it's very difficult. Um, I call the project now EOF because it's more somehow is easier. Uh, so I do not want to summon too immediately biased ideas like yes, we can live without fear and stuff like that. Um,
I understand.
yeah,
Okay.
but also nevertheless I worked a lot with people that were somehow former new age people or spiritual people. Uh, by former I mean not really completely out of it, but nevertheless they wanted to discuss about that. They wanted to discuss the validity of their beliefs. They wanted to discuss their cognitive confusion about all the stuff about life, and they were prone to be critical about it.
I
Um,
see.
it's very difficult because some of these people they want maybe some they want to go deep into the critical understanding of things like logicality, critical analysis, but not as deep. So when they realize that what you do is not at all something mystical or aimed to achieve whatever form of enlightenment and stuff like that, usually they get upset, they turn against you. Uh, so it's very tricky.
Right. So, what's your personal kind of understanding of why you do this? Of like, what's your personal goal
My,
in this project?
but I would say I don't really have a personal goal. I think that I think it should be a collective goal. And well, probably, particularly nowadays, uh, because of the overload of information we have to receive and process every day, no matter if we like it or not. Um, and because we don't quite what a soon future will bring in terms of development of artificial intelligence, for instance. So we are becoming faster and faster and faster with the our cognitive ways to receive and process information. So it's not really my personal goal. I think should be a collective goal and not only a Western goal. And the goal should be really refining our thinking skills. Uh, what in academia they will say going meta, meaning applying deep metacognition in our own thinking. So, in terms of logical fallacy detections, in terms of improving secularism, in terms of improving multi-logicality, critical thinking. But the problem with critical thinking is that critical thinking is incredibly necessary. The problem is that it doesn't work. We have plenty of unbiased academic studies which prove that critical thinking doesn't quite work because by collecting students that study critical thinking, only students, not people in general, we have data that show, if I remember well, that only the 10% of the students, after years, they are capable to define what critical thinking is. And only the 2% are actually capable to apply that in the real life. So my goal, the the goal nourished by the project is about the question: what can we do? Consider that critical thinking is important but doesn't work. What can we do to make it work? I think that the only option we have to make it work is to combine critical thinking with other things like metacognition. Actually, I will call it meta-metacognition because we are all metacognitive. Uh, when people say that metacognition is about thinking about our own thinking, is that is a little bit biased. It's not really quite like that. We all think more or less about the way we think. Uh, my proposal is combining critical thinking with metacognition, meta-metacognition, and the study of memes, which is memetics. I really believe, and this is what I do, that by mixing together these different fields, we can really make critical thinking work. Also, in terms of applying it in the real life. Uh, I think this is pretty much the goal. So, but why do we need this goal? As I said, I think that particularly nowadays we need this goal, and we have to achieve it as soon as possible because the way we live life today is far more fast in terms of analyzing information than has never been like that before. Uh, we have an almost exponential development of modern communications, which is good. The problem is that we are not quite we don't quite care about handling that properly. For instance, by talking about fake news, all this sort of stuff. And we are moving towards a future where we will have sentient machines. So a point that I usually make is represented by what to me is a big paradox. We are developing machines now, deep machine learning, in a way where they will think multilogically. So it's no longer linear learning like obsolete machine learning. Now it's deep learning, which is based on a multilogical approach. So a form of thinking based on a multi-level based operation. We are developing that, but we are not interested in doing the same ourselves. So I think I don't think that uh, if we don't care about training ourselves in order to at least be prepared, I don't think that this is a good way to bring into being like a positive future. I think we,
Can I ask you, like, what's your professional background in, like university, things like that?
well, I have a background in sociology mainly, a little bit of psychology, critical thinking, and science in general, particularly political science. That was the university. Um, yes, pretty much this, but I would say mainly in social science and cognition.
All right. So, like, I'm wondering, like, what should I expect? I guess because all this, everything that you were telling me, sounds quite like nice to be a part of. You know,
I'm sorry?
it's nice to think like this to improve these critical thinking skills, also in memetics.
Yeah.
Because I have not heard of this field before, and I just googled it.
Memetics?
Yeah, like study. It's like symbols and what goes around in society.
No, symbols is not memetic. Symbols is semiotic.
Okay.
Let me explain to you in a very simple way. When we talk about memes, um, we are not referring to the internet memes, the usual way we know memes, right? It's not
Alright.
it's not really
Yeah.
quite like that. You can check if you check on YouTube metamemetic thinking, you can find my lecture at the European Skeptics Congress that took place a few months ago in Poland. So I gave a lecture there about what I call metamemetic thinking, and also I speak about memes. Maybe is a little bit difficult to comprehend, but it is a 30-minute speech, so you can have at least a perspective of what I mean by memetics and metamemetics, but in a very simple way. Memes, everything is a meme, but symbols are not memes. They can become memes. So what is a meme? A meme can be, for instance, a unit of culture. What is important to keep in mind is that the characteristic of memes is that memes only care about replicating themselves in order to survive, uh, psychologically, socially, and culturally, or even politically, ideologically, and so on. So they don't care about self-analysis. They don't care about criticalness. Let me give you an example, and this is also in my speech. If we if we talk about something like freedom of religion, freedom of religion, particularly nowadays, is a super powerful meme, is a unit of culture. When we talk about freedom of religion, we tend to consider freedom of religion as a good value. Uh, if we understand how memetics works properly, we will understand also that freedom of religion is not a good value at all, because in order to exist, freedom of religion implies a freedom of indoctrinating. Is inevitable. There cannot be religion without indoctrinating someone, the children, indoctrinating horizontally, generation after generation, and then vertically, like the Jehovah's Witnesses. So, most people fail to understand that a meme like this is actually dangerous. It's not a nice meme that has to do with human rights and stuff. Obviously, each one of us, when we have a legal age, each one of us is free to believe in whatever the person likes to believe. So I have the freedom and the human right to worship a banana tree if I like. And then hopefully other people have the same right to question me, hopefully. But if we promote on a large scale freedom of religion as a nice value and human right, we are going to summon problems. Because indoctrinating children is not really that nice. So you see, when we promote this, we contribute to the spreading of a meme like that. The meme replicates itself with eventually variations, modifications, but we fail to analyze it properly and critically, which is very counterintuitive to do that, but it's not impossible. And by the way, also we lack of an education like this. Imagine if imagine if we were trained this way because of our education. Probably the society nowadays will be very different. I don't mean to put religious people down. I have nothing. I respect the people. But I do not respect violent means. Uh, and I believe that I'm quite objective in what I'm saying now. Uh, you see, the only problem is just that well, we have to keep in mind that critical thinking is not a natural way to think. Uh, is unnatural. We are not biologically, we are not wired to be critical. We are wired to be fallacious and to be fallible. By an unnatural way to think, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying that it's very hard to think this way. So the project's goal is fundamentally about not obviously not imposing, is up to people, is about trying to train people to think this way. Because I believe that can be that many benefits can be brought into being, particularly for the future, regarding the future. So am I making myself a little bit more clear now, also with the matter of memetics and
I understand.
stuff? What I mean by metamemetics is I made that term up, just like Richard Dawkins coined the term memes. What I mean by metamemetics, meta means beyond. What I mean is refers to the possibility to think when we come across fallacious biased memes, to think automatically in terms of anti-memes. So pretty much like in computer science, uh, um, a machine will detect a virus as the virus enters the system, and we respond automatically with a reaction which comes from the antivirus. I think this analogy is very is not only a metaphor. I think we can do the same, cognitively speaking. I think we are not capable of doing that because we are not trained to do that.
But not for all memes. Also, like only for like the memes that we have grown to not like.
No, there are not all memes are bad. I mean, there are many good memes. For example, but well, human rights is a meme, but it's a good one. The 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 green symbol of the pharmacy, if you are in a town that which is not familiar to you, and you need some pills, you need a pharmacy. Uh, uh, mm, by detecting the usually is a cross and usually is green or sometimes is red outside of the pharmacy, even if you are very far away, you will recognize that immediately, that probably, maybe not 100%, but most likely that is a pharmacy. So in this case, that's a good meme. When we use GPS with the car, what we see on the screen is all about memes, like the arrow that you have to slow down, you have to turn, beware that 1 mile from now you have a turn. So all of those things are memes, and they are good memes. Problem is that we are not quite capable to distinguish almost immediately between good memes, constructive memes, and fallacious memes, and that's the problem.
Could I ask you about a particular meme? For example, I have this friend who has a friend, so it's not so a second order friend, and my friend tells me that I should refer to their friend with the pronoun their, like, but it's a girl.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? Like it's this the friend of the friend.
Yeah.
Is rejecting the fact that she's a girl, and she wants to be both. She wants to be like gender neutral.
Oh.
So she requests to be called with they or them.
Oh,
so she and her. Like, how should is that a meme that like how would you reason about this meme?
Well, I understand what the point is all about. I think it's ridiculous. I think that, I mean, there are people nowadays that are not happy with particularly females. They are not happy about being called in a male form. Uh, 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 and in some cases it can really reach the ridiculous. It can really go up to the ridiculous. Like for instance, there are some ladies that are proposing to change uh, even names of towns like Manchester. Why should there be as a beginning man? So is a form of sexist name. This is just absurd. I think that if we are offended by mere terms, I think that we are very immature because it's not about sexual equality, this stuff. It's not about females' rights. I'm absolutely 100% in favor of females and human rights. But getting offended or disturbed because of the sex of a word, its language, this is just absurd. I think we have other priorities to deal with. And I think like trying to change the names of terms because otherwise they sound like sexist. I think is utterly absurd, and I know that is a modern trend. This because many people are talking about this. Even Canada recently, I know that they changed the national hymn by turning the lyrics into agender lyrics. Oh, I really, I don't mean to be polemical, but I personally think this is absurd. I think it is as absurd because if we are offended by merely terms, then it's to me it's just ridiculous because terms are only terms and they are memes. They are not offensive. It's just a language. It's been like that for a very long time. So I think we should improve the language by adding new definitions, new terms, new linguistic explanatory frameworks. But we should not change the language because I'm offended because there is a male um, dissonance or a female one. I think it's just a modern superficial form of like approaching the matter of human rights. We are not going to change discrimination, the problem with discrimination, by changing the terms in a language. I mean, my proposal is what about reasoning about why people discriminate other people instead of reasoning about how to change the language, which is nonsensical. What about really putting that in the field of education? Why people have problems with this? A person belongs to another sex or gender. Why people have problems with a different color of the skin or different sexual preferences? These are the things that should be important to discuss and to comprehend. No, changing the definition because otherwise it's too much male. It sounds too much male than female, and therefore the females will be offended. So what I will propose to this friend of the friend, if when it's possible, of course, I will propose something like this. Uh, being not being aggressive, obviously, but for instance, trying to ask, please try to reason, why do you get offended? What is that disturbs you? And if you think that you feel some level of discriminations when people refer to you as a her, female, if you feel some sense of discrimination, Well, that is a conclusion. What are the premises of that conclusion? Are the premises valid? Are people really discriminating you because they use a female language referring to you? Are they really offending you? Are they really mocking you? Are they really putting you down? Or they are just using the language? So, these kind of approaches, because otherwise, I think if we support collectively this stuff, I think that the future is going to be very bad. I think there will be laws, for instance, like blasphemy laws. They are already here in many Western countries. Uh, we cannot say something against Islam, for instance, because otherwise some people get offended. In Sweden, probably 1 or 2 months ago, a girl got 2 years in prison because she was mocking Islam on social media. 2 years. And in the same country, Sweden, an Islamic person from Maghreb uh, got 22 days in prison because he raped a girl, a Swedish girl.
Oh my God.
So I think this political correctness stuff, we have to be very careful with this. We have to be very, very careful. I'm not pro-Trump and all that absurdity, of course, but I think that we have to be very careful with these memes of goodness, political correctness, and all this sort of stuff, because otherwise it's going to become a mess. A mess. I want to be free to not to offend uh, Islam, for instance. I don't have to offend Islam, but I want to be free to speak against it, to speak about the absurdity. I want to be free to call a female as a female and a male as a male. I don't see what is wrong in it. It's just a language. I'm not discriminating people. Uh, should we even change like the way we call our pets? Otherwise, maybe they can get offended. So I cannot call my female cat girl. I should change the language. But it's just absurd. I think we really have other urgencies to deal with nowadays. Not really these kind of things. Unfortunately, many people are talking about these things. It's becoming a form of modern religion. Political correctness is really becoming a form of religion. Uh, I think when people get offended by mere words, I think those people are very immature. I'm not offended by terms. I'm offended by a glorification of stupidity. We can see that a lot, particularly in North America. I'm offended by religions. I'm offended by injustice. All these sort of things. I'm not offended by if a person calls me in a male form or female form. I really don't care. I'm willing to discuss with that person, but I really don't care. I think it's a Western form of little way to think about human rights that can really become extreme, and I think it's very bad. I think it's very bad. What do you think about this?
Um, so I disagree with the fact that words that I think we need to change some words, but I disagree with the whole movement.
Okay.
It's like I largely agree with you. The part that I didn't agree with you is that words by themselves don't have power. Like they're part of the memes. That's kind of how I understand it.
Yeah, well, they can be very offensive, but so I don't mean if I call a woman woman, I'm not using. I mean, the word woman has not been invented in order to mock the person or to put the person down. It's just a classification. It's like if a woman is an architect, I will say architect. If I have to refer to the job, the qualification person has. But of course, if we use offensive words, like if I call a person moron, that okay, maybe I should change my way to approach myself to people.
Yeah, but that's because of a meaning.
Yeah.
Not of the actual letters.
Yes.
What I'm trying to say is that the letters also mean something because of the classification that you mentioned, like how, like this is at least how I understand it. In our minds, how words sound and how they are written down has largely to do on how they are processed in the brain. So words that are let's say separate in meaning but close in pronunciation or close in their spelling, they might be closely associated with the brain, making it easier for the brain to make connections between them. And I think this is the biggest case for this radical leftist movement. Although I disagree with it, like you see what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that the fact that although there's no inherent there's no purposeful discrimination in the word woman, except for classification purposes. It's not discriminating, right?
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's not discriminating. That how it is processed in the mind might help in actually widening in actually making the meaning more discriminative because of how it is posed.
Yeah, but you see, it's a matter of personal and collective education. Because when I use the term woman, I refer to the biological classification. No, it's not a cultural classification. It's specifically the person's gender. So that person is a woman. Is it a woman? Yes. Is she a woman? Yes. So I'm talking about biology applied. I mean, a biological reality translated in a term, which is language. If I will, if we want to talk about getting offended by this stuff, I will understand if a person that maybe the person grew up in a country the person doesn't like anymore, maybe Iraq or maybe Yemen, I I'm more prone to understand if the person doesn't like to be called Iraqi, because because Iraq is an invention, is a meme. Of course, geographically, it does exist as a country, and the culture is there as well. But the idea of Iraq has been manufactured by people. It has nothing to do with biology, has nothing to do with the naturalness of things. So, and it has to do with memetic imprinting of a specific culture. So, I sort of understand if a person says, please, I, I don't no matter if I'm a male or a woman or a female, please don't call me Iraqi because I do not identify myself with that country. I'm from Italy. I I have none of these problems, but I don't quite like to be called Italian. So if a person says that, I really don't care because I don't really quite like to identify myself with that culture, and I don't want to identify myself with any culture. But it's not. I don't want to be idealistic about this stuff. It's just a viewpoint. Then people can call me Italian. People can call me mafia. People can call me Berlusconi. I really don't care. I can eventually laugh. Also, because we do need some. We should never kill humor. It's very important. But when I use terms that are related to the biological reality, why should I twist that? A woman means animal that belongs to the category of human Homo sapiens, and the sex is female. That's all. Then, if there are cultural implications, then we should discuss about the cultural implications. Because if we were not living in North America, it's easy to talk about this stuff. But if we were living in Saudi Arabia, and you have to make a hotel reservation, and you say the client is a woman, then they will interpret the term not in biological terms only, but in cultural terms, and they will say no, you cannot reserve an hotel room because your client is a woman and she's traveling alone. Now, if they if there is no mention of the sex, when the woman will show up at the hotel's door claiming a room, nevertheless, they won't give her a room because they will recognize she's a woman. So the problem is not solved. So I think that we Western people, we are a little bit too spoiled when it comes to talk about political correctness and human rights, only because we can talk about that. I think we should rationalize priorities out. I think this is absolutely not a priority, and I think that if people get offended easily by terms, I think those people are very too close to be, mentally speaking, spoiled brats instead of like good thinkers. And this has nothing to do with human rights, really. Uh, we have major issues. We have the problem with religions. We have the problem with increasing of human stupidity. We don't talk about stupidity as a taboo. It should be studied in the field of education, actually, properly. And we have a unpredictable and super fast future to come. We have serious problems in processing information decently, which is why we have fake news all over the place. I think these are the priorities. No changing the language. That is it's future. We can wait. It will be spontaneous. So really, and also I have to say, I think we have to be prepared to be offended. Nowadays we get offended out of memes, not really out of, objective offenses. You see, if we give nourishment and protection to these new beliefs, they really become new religions. So in the future, we will probably go to jail only because of certain terms we used in public, and other people got offended. I mean, it's just absurd.
I understand.